This is 2020. This is Andrew McLennan, your host today. Really looking forward to this next segment. We have a very special guest with us. We're going to talk today about the ongoing challenge of churches keeping young people engaged with God and also with church. Sometimes we refer to this as shutting the back door in our churches. And, there's an alarming statistic which says about 35% of people who are young in church eventually leave church when they become fully fledged adults. So our special guest today has done a deep dive into denominational data, and it reveals the key characteristics that actually help young people stay engaged, both with God and also with church. His name is Al James. He's a youth ministry advisor for Western Sydney with Youthworks. He lives in Sydney. His ministry website is youthworks.net. But Al James, it's our pleasure to welcome you on 2020 today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Al, we're really looking forward to this conversation today. What led you to start doing some deep dive research into finding out, why young people stay in church and why young people leave church?
I mean, the opportunity presented itself for me to do some research in this, but I have to say as well, I really care about this. I want young people to be in the kingdom. The same thing that that leads me to want, youth ministries, kids ministries, churches to do a good job of evangelism and a good job of seeing people come to Christ. It's the same thing that, drives me in this research as well. I want to see people in the kingdom. So it means I want to, make sure they retain their faith long term and do everything we possibly can to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask, what do you think the most important thing is, or what's the biggest reason why people stay in church and engage with God in a church setting?
Yeah, so there's been a fair bit of research, the things that are happening in the Western church, in the US and in the UK as well. And as I kind of look at it, it's hard to kind of get all of that research and kind of go, well, there's this one thing. But as I look at it, I think the overall picture kind of presents like kind of an integrated faith, a faith that for young people really works in the world. And so, some of the ways you might see that is that where there's shallow discipleship, where people are ill-equipped for to live a Christian life in the world and with the challenges that are presented with the world, that correlates with young people not retaining faith, same as where young people are not kind of integrated into the body of Christ, are not, they're feeling segregated or they're feeling isolated in church. That also correlates with young people not retaining faith. And then where families are not vibrant hubs of faith, we see that becomes an issue for faith as well. And so as I look at those sort of three broad pictures, I think that they all point to the idea that young people are seeing faith present itself, and they're seeing a faith that is lived out and works in the world, and they're able to kind of deal with the challenges that the world will throw at them.
Yeah, so give me those hot three things again. There was three keys you gave us. So just summarize the first one. What's the first one?
Yeah, so the first one's shallow discipleship. So, the research sort of points to the idea that discipleship that leaves young people ill-equipped for the world that they live in is really kind of hostile to faith. And so, Chap Clark and Cara Powell talked about the idea of, when the gospel is presented, or when Christianity is presented as, this shallow understanding of the gospel as sin management, and kids unable to define Christianity. And, David Kinnaman puts it like this. He said the next generation's disconnection stems ultimately from the failure of the church to impart Christianity as a comprehensive way of understanding reality and living fully in today's culture. And, I've got a story. I used to be a high school teacher. I remember, taking a relief lesson and chatting to the kids. This is on the northern beaches of Sydney, and we're talking a little bit about what makes a Westie.
The Westies. I remember the Westies, mate. What school were you in? This sounds like a very snobby northern beaches Sydney school. Which one was it?
It was a Christian school on the northern beaches.
You don't want to name it, do you? You don't want to name and shame, do you? But anyway, I'm getting the picture.
Of course I don't.
So what's a Westie? I'd love to hear the definition. What was a Westie?
Well, there are various definitions. If you got the Manly Daily, you weren't a Westie, or if you lived east of Pittwater Road, you weren't a Westie. And so this is where it sort of started.
Yeah. That was my definition. I'm an old Manly boy, and if you lived on the other side of Pittwater Road, forget it, mate. I actually hated you. And as a non-Christian teenager, there was almost, there were cases of violence as well, because we just didn't like anyone crossing over that Pittwater Road and coming onto the beach. Yeah. But those were the bad old days, mate. I'm sure it's all different now. But yes, that was the second one. What's another reason why someone could be a Westie?
Oh, right. Manly Daily, Pittwater Road, that kind of thing. But I remember talking to them and just saying, I got serious for a moment. Just said, the Northern Beaches can be a fairly insular and sometimes racist place. And the guy I was talking to pointed up the row and he said, yeah, because she's racist. And I kind of went, what? She's racist? And she said, yeah, I'm racist. And so, and this was she then went to talk about the experience that she'd had on the mission trip that the school had gone on. And I think my diagnosis of that was that, there was this Christian girl who was engaged in mission, but she wasn't able to tell the difference between the culture of the Northern Beaches and the culture of the kingdom. And I think to me that sort of points to that idea of a shallow discipleship, not really able to define faith comprehensively, not really able to see faith as a way that actually integrates with the life that you live. And so, of course, the gospel should never, I should say, lead to a young person claiming racism as part of who they are. But that was the case there. And so,
But that's a good point. So number one, discipleship. That's really important, isn't it? It's an ongoing issue. But what's your number 2 point?
Yeah, so where young people feel are either segregated or they have a decreased sense of belonging. And again, there's research has been done over many years that points to the idea that where young people have a deep connection to the broader church, so not just to their kind of peers, but beyond that leads to young people remaining Christian long term. And so, again, Chap Clark and Cara Powell, they wrote this book, Sticky Faith, and they said there's no silver bullet to young people retaining faith, but if there were silver shavings, it'd be intergenerational discipleship and young people serving. And again, pointing to that idea of an integrated faith that, young people have a bunch of older and younger people around them that are showing them what the Christian life looks like in a really kind of coherent way. So they're saying this isn't just something that we kind of just do on a Friday night at youth group or we just do at kids club on a Friday afternoon, but this is something that we're seeing, other credible people doing, and they're investing in me and they care about my faith. And so that's a really good thing. And so where that doesn't happen, where young people are isolated, where they don't see, where they don't have that broader connection to the body of Christ, it can really be hostile to faith in a long-term sense.
Love it. And what's the third one? It was about families that show faith and live out their faith as well at home?
Yeah. So Christian Smith and Amy Adamczyk, they wrote a book called Handing Down the Faith, and the key correlation to young people remaining Christian for them in their study was where parents talked about God at home. And so this wasn't necessarily, in a formal way where you sit down at the dining table and where you have a formal Bible reading time or a devotional time, but it was more in the ad hoc and impromptu moments. And so one of the great quotes in the book, it was something along the lines of, I won't quote it perfectly, but something along the lines of conversations about faith rarely started there, but always ended up there. And so it's this idea of parents and the home being a place where, again, they're seeing that faith is something that's lived out 24/7, not just on a Sunday. And so, they're seeing that parents have answers for the ways in which the world are kind of, the world is throwing different challenges that we're going to face. But the young people are seeing their parents and other people in their life dealing with those in a coherent way, in a way that really works.
Yeah, so good. Those three keys, really good. Discipleship and being integrated into their local church, and also families living out their faith. I want to ask our listeners today, we're going to open up the talkback lines. If you got saved, or if you were a Christian as a young person, as a teenager, and you've stayed engaged with a local church and stayed engaged with God, why do you think you've done that? I'd really like to hear people's stories today. I know myself, I've got an answer. I'm not going to give it right now. Maybe I will at 59 past the hour. But, I know myself why I did stay in church, and I know why I've stayed engaged with God. But I'd like to ask our listeners today, why did you stay engaged with God and also engage with church? Because it is a battlefield, isn't it, Al? Even just to stay in church, it is like being in a war zone in some ways, because there's so many reasons given to us the older we get why we can leave church, why we can just sort of get a bit slack, a bit lazy, or maybe a bit offended. It's sort of like the trenches, if you want to use a Gallipoli analogy, all the trenches were there and the fighting was going on, and it's easy to leave the trenches, isn't it, and take the easy road back to the beach. But to stay in the trenches and to stay serving in a local church, contributing in a local church, being a part of a fellowship, It's no easy thing to do, and I'd like to ask our listeners today, why have you stayed engaged with church? Al, tell us what you do also. You're involved in youth ministry. What other kind of youth ministry do you do?
Yeah, so I work for an organisation called Youthworks in Sydney, and that's the children's and youth ministry kind of arm of the Anglican Church. And so I meet with youth ministers. I help train youth and children's ministers at Youthworks College as well, which is, obviously a training college for youth and children's ministers. And get involved in training in the local church and that kind of thing. But I guess the bread and butter of what I do is visit youth ministries and try and help youth ministers particularly to just sort of next level their ministry and do the best ministry they possibly can.
Yeah, great. And you're an Anglican boy, a good Sydney Anglican. And do you predominantly mingle and minister in Anglican circles, or are you sort of going into different types of churches and different brands of Christianity as well?
Yeah, I mean the bulk of the people that we interact with are Anglican, but we definitely spend time with others as well. So I was up in Brisbane not long ago, talking with the Presbyterian youth and kids ministers. There's a bunch of people on our team that also are involved in a whole bunch of different ministries with Presis and with Baptists and all sorts of things like that. We run a camp called LIT, Leaders in Training, where we train young people to read the Bible, communicate it well, and then also train them for serving in their local church. And that's something that we're hoping to see more and more in kind of a national setting as well, and different people getting on board with that. So sometimes that's with Anglicans, other times it's with others as well. But everyone's welcome, I guess, is the key message there. And
you're open to visiting other churches as well. So there may be someone listening today, and you might have a youth ministry, or someone with a youth ministry looking for a dynamic young speaker. Well, Al James could be a man. He's got a real heart for young people, a real heart for keeping young people engaged with God. Welcome back to 2020. We're asking the question, why did you stay in church your whole life? What cemented or concreted your faith in the Lord and also in your local church setting? And you can call us on 1-800-316-316. We've got a couple of callers, Al, so I want to go to them right now and ask that question. Anne, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I've been in church since I was about 15, but the church that I'm in just now, that I had to come back down to the Gold Coast, started in this church since 1985, and I've been there ever since. And why I go to the church is because that's where you find the fellowship with brothers and sisters, especially if it's a church that's in renewal. But also that's where you get to understand God and who He is, and you have Christian people who love you and care for you. And so, and God told us that not to stop us from coming together to worship Him, to praise Him, and also to have a unity with brothers and sisters who are like-minded, like you are, who follow Jesus.
I love it. Al, have you got a response for Anne today?
Yeah, I just think that's a really beautiful picture of what church is, and that's just so important for young people. The caller talked about the idea of kind of fellowship and being able to be with like-minded people, and I think churches do really well, and young people need this. Christian young people need this. That they need to be kind of fully embraced by the church. They've got so much to contribute to the church just by who they are, but also the things that they can do and the things that they can kind of contribute to the church. So I just think it's really beautiful. And I'd love to see more and more churches kind of having that for young people.
Yeah, hey, Anne, we really appreciate your call. There's another caller waiting as well, but you have a super day, Anne, and that's really, really good testimony.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
God bless you, Anne. And we've got another caller, and I think his name's Andrew. I've heard that name before. Andrew, are you there? Hello. Do we have an Andrew?
We have an Alison.
Oh, sorry, Alison. There's an Andrew there somewhere as well. But Alison, why have you stayed in church your whole life?
Well, I haven't my whole life, but what I mean is there's been a few times when I haven't been in church. But as I look back, when I was a young person and when I came to the Lord, I was just on fire for God. And there was a sense of destiny in my life, always a sense of destiny. And I was involved with parachurch organisations very early. And that in itself, that sense of destiny has never left my life, so my whole life. And of course the church and the parachurch organisations were of tremendous influence on my life. You know, the pastors and other people who I looked up to and was as such. So it was that sense of destiny right from the start that actually kept me going, that God had called me, that I was important in God's sight. And
I love that. Can I just ask a question? Did you have a deep encounter with God as when you were converted? Is that what really gave you that sense of destiny?
I wouldn't call it deep. I would say that I was radically changed. I was walking in a different direction. I was actually, I was on a racehorse stud, actually looking after horses. And, I was doing all the things that a young person would do, which were opposite to what my parents brought me up to do. But I always believed in God. And I went to a church one night, and it was actually a Church of Christ. And it was there that I gave my heart to the Lord. And, God spoke to me that night. But then after that, I went nursing, and it was when I was nursing, God spoke to me again clearly that he had chosen me. Well, I thought he chose me straight away, and I had to leave nursing.
Yeah, okay, that's a really, really good testimony. I just want to ask Al for his response to that. Al, that's another good story, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And I think like that idea of that destiny, that purpose, that idea of buying into something that's very significant and substantial. I mean, we want to be inviting young people into substantial faith. It's not just a club. It's actually significantly and substantially about the gospel, about God, about Jesus. And I just love, Alison, I just love the idea that you really caught that. You really understood that this was so significant that it was going to shape your life. And the stories that you've told, or the little hints that you've given about the idea that you're able to serve as well, that you as a young person were able to contribute to your brothers and sisters and to the church and that kind of thing by service, and that there were people in parachurch organisations and the church just walking alongside you and helping you. And I guess part of that as well is just it was something that made sense of life. And I love to hear that story.
Yeah, and Alison, we really appreciate you calling. There's a few other people calling in, actually. This is obviously rung a chord with some people. But Alison, God bless you. Thank you for calling, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you. Enjoying the programs, loving them.
Okay, awesome. Have a super day. We'll talk soon. Now, we've got another caller called Adam. Adam, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Good, Adam. What made you stay engaged with God and church?
Well, the first thing is for daily Bible reading grandparents, watching them. The people that go before us, they set the way, and if you're lucky enough to have them, somehow God's helped me to keep my eyes on them. And then when I've had difficulties in the church itself, which I've had many in 48 years of my life, it's helped me to keep pushing on. And also my daily relationship with Christ in Bible reading and Christian radio, which I had in Sydney before I moved up to the Mid-North Coast, and Vision the last 7.5 years. So that just keeps me pushing through.
Yeah, have you heard the story about there was a guy outside church once, Adam, and Jesus came along, and the guy was crying and crying and crying, and Jesus said to him, "What's wrong, son?" And he goes, "Oh, they've kicked me out of the church. They don't like me in there. I'm being rejected." And the Lord said, "Oh, don't worry about it. They've done the same thing to me." So, I think there's a bit of truth in every joke there. Yeah, look, we do have tough times in churches sometimes, and that's for parishioners as well as ministers. It's a battlefield. And, Al, what's your response to that, mate? Some praying grandparents, some godly grandparents have helped Adam stay on the straight and narrow path.
Yeah, well, I think that's incredibly encouraging, because we do know that when parents talk about faith when at home, that's a significant thing. But quite clearly, there's more to it than just that. But when there are people that you can look to, people that give you a good example of faith, that kind of show you that integrated faith, the way in which faith and life work together, that's very significant. So it's just encouraging. I think that's an encouraging story for, because there'll be people out there who are, young Christians whose parents are not Christian necessarily. My parents were not Christian, and so I sort of understand that. But the idea that there are some people, whether they're grandparents or whether they're invested youth leaders or kids leaders, or whether they're friends or people in the church, whoever it is, but that can kind of just invest in young people. That's a really encouraging thing to hear.
Good on you, Adam. So you're from Warhope, New South Wales, huh?
That's correct, yes. Yep. Been up here 7.5 years, but it's been difficult too, trying to find a church. And I've been up here 7.5 years, only just really settling in now, in Port Macquarie Church, which along with my sister and wife and little girl. So you just got to keep persisting. But, the daily walk with Christ is what helps you to have the right heart to face after all your battles with people, even the battles with myself. You've got to have that daily walk with him, not just a Sunday visit, or it's got to be the home groups, it's got to be the Sunday morning and the whole thing together. I think the word for today a couple of days ago was the same sort of thing. It was talking about all the different things to fight off these battles, and fellowship is just one of them. But the daily Bible reading is a must. You can't see the church properly without seeing yourself properly through Christ, and that's what's helped me really push through.
Well, good for you for fighting that good fight, moving towns, obviously cities, in your new part of the world. And it would be easy for you to give up, wouldn't it? And say, this is too hard, I'll just sit at home on Sunday, read the Bible. But, good for you for persevering there, Adam, and connecting yourself to a local congregation, because, what I believe is Jesus is in every believer. And so therefore he's in every church, and we just got to look for him, haven't we? And we can see him in people, and we can see him in the worship and in the prayer and in the word. And yeah, you sound like a good man, and you're in a nice part of the world, Port Macquarie. I tell you what, I can't feel sorry for you, Adam, having moved to Port Macquarie 7 years ago. It's a beautiful part of the world. But Al, have you got some final thoughts for Adam? We got one more caller after Adam as well. And anything else you want to share?
Yeah, you talked about daily Bible reading, you talked about fellowship, all those sorts of things. I think just that idea of the multiple points of contact throughout the week, so whether it's the home groups, whether it's the daily Bible reading, whether it's the fellowship, even just a coffee with a believing friend, that kind of thing. I think there's something very significant about it not just being a Sunday thing, and that's obviously been a real encouragement to you and spurred you on in your faith, and that's what young people need as well.
Good on you, Adam. Well, you have a good day, mate, down there in Port Macquarie. I believe it's got the best climate in Australia. That's what I'm told anyway. But always good hearing from you, Adam. You have a super day, and we'll talk again.
Cheerio.
And we've got another caller here, Al, and it is Carol from Queensland. Are you with us, Carol?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Tell us your story, Carol. What made you stay engaged with God in a local church?
I got saved when I was 28. I'm 67 now. My mother died when I was 6 years old, and my father turned out to be a pedophile. So I grew up in an abusive home, and when I met Jesus, or Jesus found me at the age of 28, changed my entire life. And not only that, I'm Aboriginal as well. He helped me to put into perspective life and the world. And as an Aboriginal person, it helped me to forgive and to put into perspective the history of our nation in Australia, and to forgive and to have reconciliation, and to help me to love white Australia as well as love. He taught me how to love. He taught me what true love is, and he taught me the difference between right and wrong. He taught me just what life is all about. He taught me the truth, what truth is. And when you come to know the truth, that Jesus is the truth, he is the way and he is the life, and he is the only way, and that he is the way to heaven, and that there is a spiritual realm, and there is a kingdom of darkness, and there's a kingdom of light. There is a devil who is his enemy as well as our enemy. And when you begin to understand about the spiritual realm and begin to see how, life, it just didn't happen like evolution, but there is a spiritual realm going on out there, and there's a spiritual battle. and it helps you, Jesus just helps you to see how and where and why. And today, but I'm just saying how Jesus can break. There's nothing he can't break, and how he just changes those generational curses and things that are handed down in through your life. My children, I've got children, adult children, I've got grandchildren now going on to great-grandchildren. All my children, grandchildren, and now even the great-children have come to church, and my great-grandchildren know who Jesus is too, as well, and we're still on that journey in our local church.
Amazing.
And
well, they've got an amazing grandma and an amazing great grandma. But Al, I just want you just to respond to Carol. What an encouraging story. And Carol, we'll come back to you. Let Al just have a say here. Go for it, Al.
Oh, especially the end of that story, Carol. Just hearing about your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, that kind of thing, and so much of it's so significant when young people have someone to look up to, and quite clearly from the stories that you've told, like you have a very encouraging and real faith, and I think it's just so encouraging for your children and for their children to then be able to see someone with a real and a coherent and just an incredible genuine faith that will make a huge difference in their life, and so I'm really thankful for you.
Yes, it is. And we see, the crime that's going on today, lawlessness amongst our young people. My children and my grandchildren and that, they're not part of that. And, the answer is these children, they need that family structure. And the family structure doesn't only just begin in the home, but it also, you need a church family.
Yeah, so true, Carol.
Family,
so
to
true.
Get around them, and
Carol,
all of us.
You're amazing, Carol. I could listen to you all day. You've just got such a wonderful story and such a genuine faith. And your kids and grandkids and great-grandkids are so blessed, Carol, to have you as their, the matriarch of your family. And I just encourage you keep staying strong and you keep walking with God, and you're going to bear much fruit in your life. We do need to go, though, Carol, because we're coming up to the news, but please call us again, Carol. Great to hear your voice and great to hear your story.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you,
Bye.
Carol. You're a champion. You're a champion. Well, Al, what a great show. So many interesting callers with some great stories there. And I just want to reiterate those three keys you said earlier. Number one, discipleship. Number two, an integrated connection into a local church. And number three, being part of a family where their faith is outworked. But, if you've just joined us, we have Al James. He's a youth minister from Sydney, a good Anglican boy from Sydney. And for all of our listeners, we do have a digital signal in Sydney now. We're trying to grow our Sydney audience. And Al's ministry is called Faith Works, I believe it is. Is that what it's called, Al?
Youthworks.
Youthworks. Where did I get that from? Faithworks. Youthworks.net. You can check him out online. That's youthworks.net. Al, you got 30 seconds, mate. Any final thoughts in the last 30 seconds?
I think I want to say to everybody, and I want to say to the churches out there, take young people seriously. That's what they need. Recognise the contribution that young people can make to you personally, but then also can make to the body of Christ. And, and welcome young people into the body of Christ. Give them opportunities to serve. Help them, be one of the people that invests in them, in their discipleship, because that's what young people need.
Legend. Al, such a pleasure to have you on the show. We want to get you back again as well. We need you as a regular guest, actually, because this is such an important area, keeping that back door closed in a church. You're in 2020. We're going to the National News Bulletin now, and after the news, another Sydney guest, a Sydney mum who's also a podcaster. She's massive. Her name is Amy Townsend. Looking forward to that after the National News here on Vision.